My name is Emma, and I'm a 20-year-old university student living in New York. I grew up in a family that went through its share of changes. My parents got divorced when I was 14, and I've lived with my mom ever since. Things got even tougher last year when my dad, who I was very close to, passed away from cancer. He left me a significant amount of money in his will, but I could only access it when I turned 20. This year, I reached that milestone, and not long after, something pretty unbelievable happened. One afternoon, my stepdad Justin, who is in his mid-30s and has been married to my mom for the last 6 years, asked to talk to me. Our relationship has always been a bit strained. I try to keep things peaceful, but he's not always been the kindest to me. He started the conversation with a heavy topic. He suggested that I give the money my dad left me to my stepbrother Michael to help with his college expenses. According to Justin, Michael needed the money more for his education, and it seemed only fair to him that I help out. I was taken aback by his request. The idea of giving away the money my dad left for me felt wrong. I tried to explain to Justin that this inheritance was something my dad intended for me, and it felt important to keep it for my future. But Justin didn't see my point of view. He insisted that I didn't need the money and that Michael's needs were greater. Despite his pressure, I stood my ground. I calmly explained to Justin that saying no wasn't about disrespect. It was about honoring my dad's wishes and maintaining personal boundaries. Justin got quite upset at my refusal and tried to intimidate me, but I remained firm in my decision. It was a challenging conversation, but it was important for me to speak up for what I felt was right. I stood firm, making it clear that if Justin was upset by my refusal, he might want to reconsider his approach. Justin, remember you're part of this household too, so let's try to keep things respectful, I suggested, but it seemed like a peaceful resolution wasn't in the cards. I ended the conversation there, leaving before he had the chance to respond. Justin's reaction wasn't a shock to me, given his past behavior. I had a hunch he might try to claim the inheritance money for himself at some point. You might wonder about my mom's role in all of this. Well, that's a complex issue. My mom, for reasons I can't fully understand, always seems to overlook Justin's negative traits. She's deeply in love with him, almost to the point of blindness, and I didn't want to shatter her perception by constantly clashing with Justin. So I've tried to maintain peace for her sake. It's odd considering I'm one of the youngest in the house, yet often I find myself having to be the most responsible. At the time of this ordeal, my mom Mary was out of town, which is why she wasn't around to intervene. Had she been there, she would have been livid. Justin knew he had a window of opportunity with her away, underestimating my resolve in the process. As I walked away from our heated discussion, Justin followed, berating me and labeling me a terrible sister for not wanting to hand over the inheritance to Michael. But it wasn't about not wanting to help, it was about the principle of the matter. Justin and Michael unfortunately seemed to follow the like father, like son trope, acting more like schemers from a cartoon than family members. Their antics could remind someone of the characters Pinky and the Brain, with their roles in this scenario up for debate. As I tried to leave the argument behind, Justin wasn't done. He insisted I listen and comply with his demands, bringing Michael into the conversation to reinforce his point. Michael sleepily joined in, confused about the details until Justin prompted him about the important reason behind their demand for the money. A supposed business venture that suddenly became about Michael's university tuition. Their story was inconsistent, with Justin scrambling to justify their claim to my inheritance, first mentioning a business, then switching to tuition. It was clear their motives were murky at best, relying on manipulation rather than any real need or right to the money my dad left me. I just woke up, so I'm a bit foggy, Michael mumbled, trying to piece together his story. Right, the university. I've been thinking about going, and I need the money for that. So yeah, I need it. His attempt to claim the inheritance for his education was unconvincing at best. I couldn't help but respond with a firm no, prompting a flurry of protests from both him and Justin. Why not Emma? He's clear about what he wants, Justin pressed, insisting the matter was non-negotiable and that they were entitled to the money. We'll just have to see about that, I replied, the air growing thick with tension. Justin's antics were usually limited to harmless pranks, but this new scheme to manipulate me out of my inheritance marked a departure into outright selfishness and immaturity. I decided to hold off on telling my mom for the time being, preferring to handle the situation on my own, especially after uncovering more about their dubious intentions. Emma, stop being childish. It's time to act like an adult and do what's right, Justin lectured, suggesting that the adult thing to do was to hand over my inheritance. His logic was baffling. And what you think is the right thing is to give away my inheritance on your say-so. I countered. His plea to keep this from my mom raised my suspicions further. Why shouldn't I tell her? She has every right to know what's happening in her own house. Justin's desperation not to involve my mom, paired with his uncharacteristically stern tone, only fueled my resolve. Something was definitely amiss, particularly with the so-called business venture Michael had mentioned earlier. It was clear they underestimated my awareness of their tactics, and Justin's opposition to me sharing anything with my mom was a red flag. I reached out to my mom at the first opportunity. Hey Mom, how's everything with you? I began, trying to gauge her mood. I'm all right, dear. What about you? She responded. I hesitated, knowing what I was about to divulge could cause a stir. Not great, Mom. Something's up with Justin and Michael. Justin in particular. He's been acting really strange. My mom's response was to caution me against overthinking things. Oh, Emma, don't let your imagination get the better of you. But it was too late for reassurances. The pieces were too aligned, pointing to something more than just a misunderstanding or paranoia on my part. Understanding my mom's reluctance to believe the unsettling truth about Justin, I pressed on, determined to shed light on the situation. Mom, I get that you have feelings for him, but Justin crossed a line. He didn't just ask for the inheritance money. He demanded it for Michael, claiming it was for education purposes. There's something off about this whole thing, and he even became aggressive when I mentioned bringing it up to you. I explained, my resolve hardened to spite her skepticism. My mom hesitated, torn by her emotions and the troubling accusations against the man she cared for. I'm struggling to grasp this, Emma. I feel like we need more evidence to make sense of it all. Don't worry, Mom. I'll find the proof we need, I assured her, even though she wasn't entirely convinced. The idea that Justin had somehow bewitched her with his manipulations nagged at me, but I knew I needed solid evidence to reveal the true nature of his intentions. Later that night, I found myself scanning the family computer for any clues that could unravel the mystery of Justin's behavior. Fortune seemed to be on my side when I discovered that Justin had carelessly left his email account open. What I found was a revelation. Emails exchanged between Justin and a woman named Martha painted a clear picture of deceit. These messages were far from innocent, hunting strongly at an affair. But it was the content discussing plans for a divorce and a future together, fueled by an influx of money from a dubious business venture, that caught my attention. Justin may have been cautious not to detail any illegal activities, but his indiscretion and betrayal were blatant. Armed with this information and determined to uncover more, I decided to approach Michael, hoping he might inadvertently reveal more about their plans. I initiated a casual conversation with him, slyly turning on my phone's recorder to capture our exchange. "Hey, Michael," I greeted him, fighting to sound cheerful. "Hello, Emma," he replied, seemingly in a good mood. "You seem happy today." "Why not? It's a beautiful day," I said, steering the conversation in hopes of discovering more about Justin's schemes and their impact on my family. I approached Michael with a sense of curiosity, pretending to consider their request for the inheritance money. "I've been thinking a lot about what you and Justin mentioned. I'm actually considering giving you the money for your college," I told him, watching his reaction closely. "Really? That's amazing. I'll let him know right away," Michael said, his excitement palpable. "Hold on, not so quickly. Before anything happens, I need to confirm something. This money is specifically for your college tuition, correct?" I pressed on, trying to gauge his sincerity. "Yes, of course, for my college tuition." Michael stuttered a bit, perhaps caught off guard by my questioning. "And you're sure about this? What about Martha? Is she serious about it too?" I prodded, dropping the name I had discovered in Justin's emails. "Martha? Who's Martha?" Michael faltered, a clear sign of confusion crossing his face. "She's a student advisor at the college," he quickly covered up, but it was too late. Unbeknownst to us, Justin had silently entered the room, and his presence was intimidating. "I don't appreciate you questioning my son like this," he interjected, his tone stern. I was merely inquiring about the intended use of my inheritance. After all, if I'm considering giving it away, I'd like to know it's for a good reason, I explained, trying to maintain my composure. Justin's retort was sharp. "Once you give money away, it's no longer yours to worry about. It's not your business anymore." The audacity of his statement took me aback, especially considering his next threat. "You're not just thinking about giving us the money. You will give it to us, or you'll find yourself out of this house." Michael looked as shocked as I felt by his father's escalation. "Dad, this isn't what we agreed on," he began, only to be cut off by Justin, asserting his authority in a domineering tone, threatening my place in the home if I didn't comply with his demands. Choosing silence as my response, I retreated to my room, all the while recording the entire confrontation. Justin was unaware that his true colors were being captured for posterity. Once safe in my room, I began compiling all the evidence I had against him. It felt like I was a detective in one of those crime shows, piecing together the puzzle. I had audio recordings and email screenshots, all pointing to Justin's deceitful behavior and his affair with Martha. Feeling the weight of my findings, I decided it was time to bring my mom into the loop. "Hello, Mom," I started, my voice laced with urgency. "Hey, sweetheart, how are you?" She responded, unaware of the storm brewing. "Mom, are you sitting down? I have something important to tell you, and it's not easy," I said, preparing her for the revelations that were to come. Breaking the news to my mom was tough. I started by telling her about the unsettling discoveries I had made. Initially, she found it hard to believe, but when I played the audio recording of my conversation with Justin, her denial began to fade, replaced by a mixture of shock and heartbreak. Why would he do such things? Why be so cruel? She questioned, her voice breaking with every word. It's hard to say, but we're dealing with someone who doesn't have our best interests at heart. I replied gently, trying to be as supportive as I could despite the harsh reality. I hate to say it, but he's not the person we thought he was. Hearing the truth straight from the recording was a turning point for her. This is unacceptable. I can't believe I wasn't here to protect you from them, she said, determination taking over her initial shock. Stay put. I'm coming back immediately. And yes, I locked my door, I reassured her. My mom's protective instincts kicked in full force. She was ready to confront Justin and ensure he regretted his actions. He's going to realize he picked the wrong family to mess with, she said, a fierce resolve in her voice. When she arrived, it was a moment filled with mixed emotions. We hugged tightly, sharing tears over the betrayal and the tough decisions that lay ahead. Yet there was also a sense of relief and unity. Together, we spent hours devising a plan, ready to face the ordeal as a team. In the days that followed, Justin was perplexed by my mom's unexpected return and her cold demeanor towards him. He tried to play it off with a veneer of cheerfulness, likely hoping to charm his way out of any suspicions. But my mom was unmoved. She saw right through his act and was gearing up to take decisive action. Concerned about the true nature of Justin's business and the potential misuse of the inheritance, my mom decided it was time to bring in professional help. She hired a private investigator to dig deeper into Justin's activities and the mysterious emails. The thought of him planning to misuse the money for unethical purposes infuriated her further, and she was adamant about protecting us from his deceit. The private investigator's findings confirmed our worst fears and shed new light on Justin's scheming. My mom briefed me on the details, and together we prepared for the next steps. It was clear that this was more than just a family dispute. It was about standing up against manipulation and ensuring justice was served. In that moment, the atmosphere in the room was charged with tension, a palpable mix of disbelief and resolve hanging between us. Justin's usual confidence seemed to falter under the weight of our accusations, his eyes darting from the camera to my mom, then to me, as if searching for some escape or loophole in our confrontation. You can't possibly understand what you're talking about. This is ridiculous, Justin tried to deflect, but his voice lacked its usual assertiveness. It was clear the tables had turned, and the power he once wielded so effortlessly was slipping through his fingers. Michael, caught in the middle of this familial storm, looked from his father to us, his expression a mix of confusion and realization. Perhaps for the first time, he began to see the man he called father for who he truly was, a revelation that seemed to shake him to his core. My mom, with a steely gaze fixed on Justin, stepped forward. Not only do we understand, but we have proof, emails, recordings. You've been planning to launder money through a laundromat, all the while involving yourself with a known criminal. Martha's record speaks volumes, and your plans for this business are clear as day. Justin's attempts to maintain any semblance of innocence were crumbling fast. You have no idea what you're getting into. This is my business, my life. You can't just barge in. But we can, and we are, I interjected, bolstering my mom's stance. This isn't just about your business, Justin. This is about our lives, our safety. You've brought danger and illegality into our home, and we won't stand by and watch you destroy everything for your selfish gains. The evidence was indisputable. The audio recordings of Justin's and Michael's conversations, the emails outlining their plans, and now their caught in the act admissions made it impossible for Justin to deny any longer. The camera in my hands, still rolling, captured every word, every denial, and every excuse, ensuring there was no way out for him. You think you're clever, recording this, gathering evidence. Justin sneered, his composure cracking further. You may think you've won, but we don't think we've won, Justin. We know we have. My mom cut him off, her voice firm and unwavering. What you've done is not only morally reprehensible, but illegal. You've endangered this family, exploited my trust, and now you're going to face the consequences of your actions. As the confrontation reached its climax, Michael finally spoke up, his voice barely above a whisper. Dad, how could you? It was a question loaded with betrayal and disillusionment, aimed at the man he had looked up to. The room fell silent for a moment, the gravity of the situation settling in. Justin, now devoid of his usual bravado, seemed to shrink before us. It was clear the game was over. My mom's next steps were clear: legal action, separation, and ensuring the safety and security of our family. As we left Justin to contemplate the ruin of his own making, my mom and I knew the road ahead would be difficult, but with the truth on our side and the evidence in hand, we were ready to face whatever came next together. The veil had indeed been lifted, and in its place, a newfound strength and unity emerged between us, ready to rebuild and move forward from the shadows of deceit. I'm clueless about what you're hinting at. Why don't we call Martha? Maybe she can shed some light on this, huh? Justin tried to deflect with a tone that fairly masked his panic. You two think you've got it all figured out. Martha is just a friend, he added, but the confidence he attempted to project was waning rapidly. The compromising pictures we found tell a different story, I countered, my voice steady despite the tumult of emotions inside me. And seriously, who uses email for affairs these days? It's absurdly reckless. Justin, now visibly flustered, shot back, You went through my personal stuff. That's outrageous. No, Justin, what's outrageous is you. My mom interjected, her voice rising in indignation. How dare you repeatedly threaten my daughter over money that rightfully belongs to her? How dare you use threats to attempt to evict her from her own home? Your actions are indefensible. How dare you involve your son in your reckless plans, putting him at risk? And your audacity to plan using that money for illegal ventures is beyond forgiveness. Now, when it's time to account for your actions, you suddenly fall silent. She continued, her words cutting through the air like a blade. Justin, cornered and desperate, spat out, "Get that camera out of my face," as he lunged towards me in a blind rage. I dodged his attempt swiftly, his aggressive move only adding to the gravity of his unraveling. You're thinking of attacking my daughter now. Do you have any idea how much trouble you're in? My mom exclaimed, her tone a mix of disbelief and anger. Justin, defiant to the end, sneered, "You think you understand the situation. You know nothing." Well, let's see if the police agree with you. They should be arriving any minute now, I declared, watching closely for his reaction. Police? You wouldn't dare, he blustered, but his bravado was crumbling as the sound of police sirens grew closer. Justin's usual smugness disappeared, replaced by a look of sheer terror. It was the first time I'd seen him stripped of his arrogance, revealing the coward beneath. Please, Mary, let's not escalate this. I can explain, he pleaded, his voice cracking under the strain. Save your explanations for the judge, you despicable man, my mom retorted with a disgust that left no room for ambiguity. And Michael, don't think you're absolved from responsibility. You're both going to face the consequences of your actions. As the police arrived, it was clear that this was the beginning of the end for Justin's schemes. My mom's fierce declaration echoed in the air, marking a pivotal moment of justice for us. This should teach you a lesson about disrespecting my daughter and me. You're not too young to understand the difference between right and wrong, and it's time for you to face the consequences, my mom asserted, her tone firm but fair. Yes, Mom, I understand, Michael replied, knowing that he had crossed a line and needed to accept the repercussions of his actions. Come on, Grace, don't you think this is all a bit too extreme? Justin tried to argue, seeking some leniency. Quite the opposite. This is barely scratching the surface of what's deserved, my mom countered, her resolve unwavering. Emma, how's our live stream doing? She inquired, adding a modern twist to ensuring that justice was seen to be done. We've got over 5,000 viewers tuning in. This is making waves. I informed her, amazed at the digital audience we had attracted. And just to make things perfectly clear, my mom turned towards Justin, her voice steady and clear. I want a divorce. Yes, you heard it right, folks, she announced, making sure the live stream caught every word. The fallout from the live stream was monumental. The drama unfolded in real time for over 5,000 witnesses, and a story quickly spread to local newspapers and tabloids. Being at the center of this whirlwind was surreal, witnessing the swift downfall of Justin, my soon-to-be ex-stepfather, and the complicit Michael. The satisfaction of seeing justice served was palpable. Justin's world unraveled as he lost his job, friends, and even the support of some family members who chose to distance themselves. Facing serious charges, Justin's future hung in the balance, with the potential of spending up to 20 to 22 years behind bars if the court found him guilty. Meanwhile, Martha, his partner in crime, was also discovered by the police after attempting to lay low during the scandal. She too faced similar charges, her future uncertain. Through the turmoil, my mom and I found strength in each other. Our bond deepened as we navigated through the chaos, coming out stronger on the other side. Weekends were now our time to unwind on the patio, drinks in hand, reflecting on the absurdity and malevolence of Justin's actions. It was a period of healing and reaffirmation for us both. Good riddance, we toasted, a shared sentiment of relief and closure. Good riddance indeed.
Only my real daughter deserves to be a mother first. Margaret's voice oozed satisfaction through the phone. I swapped your fertility meds for sugar pills weeks ago. Amanda needs this more than you. My fingers curled around the edge of my desk, the rage simmering beneath a veneer of calm. Thank you for confirming that, Margaret, I said evenly. Silence stretched across the line. She'd expected sobbing, begging, anything but this cold composure. My name is Olivia Chen. I'm 32 years old, and I just received verbal confirmation that my mother-in-law had deliberately sabotaged my IVF treatment. Also, her biological daughter could become a mother first. What Margaret didn't know was that I'd already discovered her treachery 3 weeks ago. What do you mean? She asked, her smugness beginning to fray. Nothing, I said smoothly. I have to go. Dr. Roberts is expecting me. I ended the call before she could speak again. Dr. Roberts wasn't just my fertility specialist. She was the one who'd helped me unravel everything. The inconsistencies in my medication, the strange shape of the tablets, the altered coding. I'm a pharmaceutical researcher. I don't miss details like that. When the first round of IVF failed despite textbook perfect conditions, something didn't sit right. So I installed a discreet camera in my home office, where I kept my medication. That footage showed Margaret using her spare key, one James insisted she keep for emergencies, to sneak in, replace my prescriptions, and smile as she worked. This is criminal, Dr. Roberts had said, jaw tight as she watched the footage. Tampering with fertility drugs isn't just cruel, it's a felony. Together, we laid a trap. I faked a second round of treatment, preserved every swapped-out pill, and documented each step. And now, with Margaret's confession on record, we had everything we needed. My phone buzzed. Amanda. Mom told me the good news. I'm pregnant. Guess you'll have to wait your turn. I stared at the screen, remembering the years of little sabotages, accidental spills, snide comments masked as compliments, constant jabs about how a real woman would have given James children by now. And James, my husband of 5 years, had stayed willfully blind through it all. She's just traditional, he'd said. She means well. Even when I told him I suspected someone was tampering with my meds, he'd brushed it off. You're being paranoid. Mom would never. My office phone rang again. Margaret. I let it go to voicemail. A new email blinked onto my screen, my lawyer. Everything was ready. One word from me and the case would move forward. Footage, documentation, preserved evidence, and now Margaret's own voice confessing her crime. Another ping, Amanda again. Mom says you're ignoring her calls. Don't be jealous just because I'm going to be a mom first. I exhaled slowly, remembering Dr. Roberts' quiet reassurance just days ago. You're healthy, Olivia. Once we remove the interference, there's no reason this shouldn't work. What she did is unforgivable, but not irreversible. James texted next. Mom says you're acting cold about Amanda's news. Can't you just be happy for her? I rose, gathering my bag and the folder filled with evidence. Time for my meeting with Dr. Roberts, which was really a final review session with my lawyer. As I drove, I recalled the moment I first watched Margaret on the footage, her expression victorious as she held up the fake pills, snapping a selfie like a trophy hunter. Amanda will be first, she whispered into the silence. The way it should be. But the flaw in her plan, she thought I wouldn't fight back. That I was just the career-focused outsider who'd never truly belong. She didn't realize every step she took was another nail in her coffin. I parked outside the lawyer's office, checking my phone. 5 missed calls from Margaret, 3 from James, another text from Amanda. Mom's worried. She says you're acting weird. Don't forget, family comes first. Family comes first. I smiled at the irony as I stepped into the crisp afternoon air, evidence folder in hand. Margaret was about to learn what happens when you weaponize motherhood, and just how far I was willing to go to reclaim mine. The lawyer's office was quiet except for the soft hum of the air conditioning as we reviewed the evidence. Sarah Martinez, my attorney, spread the documents across her desk methodically. Medical records, video footage stills, photos of the tampered medications, and a transcript of Margaret's phone confession. This is more than enough for criminal charges, Sarah said, her expression grim. Tampering with prescription medications is a felony. We're talking potential jail time. I nodded, thinking about how Margaret's smug smile would fade when she realized the gravity of her actions. Another text buzzed through. James again. Mom's really upset. She says you're threatening her. What's going on? Your husband still doesn't know. Sarah asked, noting my expression. He's about to, I replied, checking the time. I've arranged a family meeting tonight. Everyone will be there. James, Margaret, Amanda, even my father-in-law Robert. Sarah raised an eyebrow. Are you sure you want to do it this way? They've all played their part in this, I said firmly. Margaret did the switching, but Amanda knew about it, and James chose to ignore every warning sign. They all need to face this together. By the time I arrived home, James was already there, pacing the living room. What's this about a family meeting? He demanded. Mom's freaking out, and Amanda says you're acting weird. I set my evidence folder on the coffee table. We'll discuss everything when everyone arrives. I've ordered dinner, should be here in 20 minutes. James ran his hand through his hair, a nervous habit he shared with his mother. Liv, if this is about Amanda's pregnancy, it's about a lot more than that. I cut him off, my voice steady. Just wait. The doorbell rang at exactly 6. Margaret burst in first, her face flushed with artificial concern. Olivia, darling, we've been so worried. This behavior isn't like you at all. Amanda followed, one hand protectively over her stomach, while Robert brought up the rear, looking uncomfortable as usual. I gestured to the dining room where I'd set up my laptop. Please, everyone have a seat. There's something you need to see. Really, Olivia? Margaret started, if you're upset about Amanda's blessing. Play the video, I said to James, who stood near the laptop. He hesitated, then pressed play. The footage was crystal clear. Margaret entering my home office, carefully switching my medications, taking selfies with the fake pills. The audio picked up her running commentary perfectly. Amanda deserves this. Olivia's too career-focused. My real daughter should be first. The color drained from Margaret's face. Amanda's mouth fell open. Robert stared at his wife in horror. But it was James' reaction that hurt the most. The way his eyes widened in recognition, finally forced to acknowledge what he'd refused to see. Turn it off, Margaret demanded, her voice shrill. No, I said calmly. There's more. I placed the medical documents on the table. Dr. Roberts documented everything. The tampered medications, the failed treatment due to interference, the potential health risks of switching prescription drugs. You were spying on me. Margaret tried to sound outraged, but fear had crept into her voice. No, Margaret, I was protecting myself. After years of your self-sabotage, I knew to be careful. But this? I held up the video stills. This crossed a line. You interfered with medical treatment. You tampered with prescription medications. You potentially put my health at risk. Mom, Amanda's voice was small. You said those were just vitamins you were switching. I turned to my sister-in-law. You knew? Amanda's silence was answer enough. James stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. How could you? He asked his mother, his voice cracking. How could you do this to my wife? Margaret's facade finally cracked. I did it for Amanda. She deserves to be a mother first. Olivia's not even family. She's just some career woman Who what? I interrupted. Who loved your son. Who tried for years to be part of this family despite your constant undermining. Who wanted to give you grandchildren but had to watch you sabotage that dream. Robert spoke for the first time. Margaret, do you realize what you've done? This is criminal behavior. Actually, I said, pulling out one final document, it's worse than that. I slid the paper toward Margaret. This is a cease and desist letter from my lawyer. We have enough evidence for criminal charges, but I'm giving you a choice. The room fell silent as Margaret stared at the letter, her hands shaking. James moved to stand beside me, finally choosing a side after years of walking the fence. What kind of choice? Amanda asked, her hand still protectively over her stomach. I met Margaret's eyes across the table. You have 24 hours to decide. Either you seek counseling, admit your actions to the entire family, and stay completely out of my medical decisions, or we press charges. Your call. I met Margaret's eyes across the table. You have 24 hours to decide. Either you seek counseling, admit your actions to the entire family, and stay completely out of my medical decisions, or we press charges. Your call. The next 24 hours transformed our family completely. Margaret, faced with irrefutable evidence and the threat of criminal charges, crumbled. Her carefully constructed image of the perfect mother-in-law shattered, leaving behind a woman who had to confront the consequences of her actions. She chose counseling. The family meeting where she had to confess everything was brutal but necessary. Aunts, uncles, cousins, everyone gathered as Margaret explained how she tampered with my fertility medications, how she prioritized Amanda's pregnancy over my health, how years of manipulation had led to this moment. I was wrong, she admitted, her voice small and unfamiliar. I convinced myself I was protecting our family's legacy, but I was just being cruel. Amanda, despite her pregnancy, couldn't look at her mother. The revelation that she'd been complicit, even in a small way, had shaken her. After the meeting, she pulled me aside, tears in her eyes. I never thought it would go this far, she whispered. Mom said she was just giving me a fair chance. But I'm so sorry, Olivia. I should have told you. James took it the hardest, learning that his mother had deliberately harmed his wife's chances of having a child. It broke something in him. He spent hours in our backyard that evening, just sitting and processing everything. When he finally came inside, his eyes were red. I failed you, he said, taking my hands in his. I should have believed you, should have protected you. I was so caught up in keeping the peace that I couldn't see what was right in front of me. I squeezed his hands. We both needed this wake-up call. 3 months later, our lives had shifted dramatically. Margaret attended weekly counseling sessions, working through her issues with control and favoritism. Robert, finally stepping up after years of passive acceptance, made sure she kept every appointment. Amanda's pregnancy progressed, but our relationship changed too. The competition Margaret had created between us dissolved, replaced by a tentative friendship. She started asking for genuine advice about pregnancy, sharing her fears and hopes without her mother's influence. I want my baby to have cousins, she told me one afternoon over coffee. Real family, not this twisted version Mom created. As for my IVF journey, Dr. Roberts started me on a new treatment plan. This time, with proper medication and without interference, things were different. The first positive pregnancy test came 6 months after the confrontation. I told James first, of course. He cried, holding me close and whispering apologies and promises. Then we told Amanda, who hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. Even Margaret, in her counseling-mandated boundaries, sent a simple text. Congratulations, I'm truly happy for you both. The day I hit 12 weeks, we had another family gathering. Not for confrontation this time, but celebration. 2 pregnancies, 2 new lives growing, free from the weight of competition and manipulation. Looking around at our healing family, I caught Margaret watching me. She aged years in these months, the consequence of facing her actions. But there was something different in her eyes now, not the calculating look I'd known for so long, but something softer, more genuine. "I have something for you," she said quietly, handing me an envelope. Inside was a letter, handwritten and tear-stained. An apology, not just for the medication tampering, but for every slight, every manipulation, every moment she'd made me feel less than. At the bottom was a promise, witnessed by her therapist, to respect our boundaries and seek help when her controlling urges surfaced. "I want to be part of their lives," she said, glancing at my stomach, "but I know I have to earn that right." James wrapped his arm around me, protective in a way he'd learned to be. "One day at a time, Mom," he said. "One day at a time." As I placed my hand over my growing bump, I realized that sometimes the greatest victories come not from destroying our enemies, but from transforming them. Margaret's attempt to sabotage my happiness had backfired, creating instead a stronger family, one built on truth and accountability rather than manipulation and favoritism. Amanda and I now share the same due date month. Two cousins who will grow up together, free from the toxic competition that almost destroyed us. And Margaret? She's learning, slowly but surely, that family isn't about control or favoritism. It's about love, support, and sometimes the courage to face our own worst selves. James kissed my temple, his hand joining mine over our growing miracle. "You know what, Liv? Your strength didn't just give us a baby. It gave us all a second chance." Looking around at our healing family, I couldn't help but agree. Sometimes the best revenge isn't punishment, it's growth. And we were all finally growing together,